What if I told you that the same planes used to smuggle weapons to Iran and arm Nicaraguan rebels ended up shipping lingerie for Victoria's Secret? And that Jeffrey Epstein was the man who helped make it happen? This isn't conspiracy theory. This is the bizarre intersection of the Iran-Contra scandal, Cold War covert operations, and one of America's most notorious financiers. A story that's been hiding in plain sight for decades. Act 1. The Iran-Contra Affair. To understand this story, we need to go back to October 1986, when a plane was shot down over Nicaragua. On board was Eugene Hazenfuss, a cargo handler who would become the only survivor, and the key witness to one of the biggest political scandals in American history. The plane belonged to Southern Air Transport, an airline with deep CIA connections. Here's what was happening. The Reagan administration wanted to support the Contra rebels fighting Nicaragua's leftist Sandinista government. But Congress had explicitly forbidden funding the Contras through the Boland Amendment. Meanwhile, Iran was holding American hostages and the administration wanted them back. The solution? Sell weapons to Iran through Israel as a middleman, then use those profits to illegally fund the Contras. None of this was legal, and Southern Air Transport was at the center of it all. ACT 2. Southern Air Transport needs a new home. By the late 1980s, Southern Air Transport was radioactive. Congressional hearings were exposing its role in Iran-Contra. Rumors swirled about cocaine trafficking from Nicaragua. The company needed to disappear from public view, but the planes and infrastructure were valuable assets. Enter Columbus, Ohio. In the early 1990s, Southern Air Transport relocated its headquarters from Miami to Columbus. The official story? They were pivoting to legitimate cargo operations, flying imported clothing from China. But according to Bob Fitrakis, a veteran Columbus journalist who covered this story at the time, something else was happening. Visual document excerpts, maps of facilities. Investigators from both the Franklin County Sheriff's Office and Ohio's Office of Inspector General were looking into Southern Air Transport. The company was still dogged by its Iran-Contra connections and smuggling allegations. And in their investigations, sources in both offices identified one name as pivotal in relocating these planes to Columbus: Jeffrey Epstein. Act 3. Jeffrey Epstein and Leslie Wexner. At this point in the early 1990s, Jeffrey Epstein was not yet a household name. He was a relatively obscure financier working for one client: Leslie Wexner, the billionaire founder of L Brands, the parent company of Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, and Abercrombie and Fitch. Wexner had given Epstein extraordinary power over his financial affairs. Epstein managed Wexner's money, his real estate investments, and had power of attorney over his assets. Their relationship was so close that Epstein even lived in Wexner's New York mansion. But what exactly was Epstein doing for Wexner that earned him such trust and access? According to Fitrakis' reporting, Epstein played a pivotal role in repurposing the Iran-Contra planes. The same aircraft that had carried weapons to Iran and Nicaragua were now hauling shipments of clothing to feed Wexner's retail empire. It was a perfect cover story: legitimate cargo operations for a legitimate retail business. The planes, the logistics infrastructure, the relationships, all of it transitioned from covert operations to consumer goods. Columbus's Rickenbacker Airport became a key hub. Wexner had deep connections in Ohio. His company was headquartered there, and he was one of the state's most powerful businessmen. Act 4. The investigation ends. Here's where the story takes a dark turn into official silence. On October 1st, 1998, Southern Air Transport abruptly declared bankruptcy. The timing was significant. Exactly 1 week later, the CIA Inspector General released findings officially linking the airline to allegations of cocaine trafficking from Nicaragua during the Contra War. But in Ohio, the investigations into Southern Air Transport and Epstein's role simply stopped. According to Fitrakis, pressure came from the governor's office. The Franklin County and state investigations were dropped. Epstein's involvement never became public. The connection between the Iran-Contra planes and Wexner's retail empire was never officially documented. This leaves us with haunting questions. How did Epstein, a financier with no obvious aviation or logistics background, become the key figure in relocating CIA-connected aircraft? What connections did he have that made this possible? Why did Ohio officials drop their investigations under political pressure? Was Wexner aware of the history of these planes, or was he simply taking advantage of available cargo capacity? The story of how Iran-Contra planes ended up shipping Victoria's secret lingerie reveals something profound about the hidden connections between intelligence operations, political power, and legitimate business. Jeffrey Epstein's role in this transition shows that years before his arrest and infamy, he was already operating in the shadows, facilitating transactions that others couldn't or wouldn't touch. His relationship with Leslie Wexner provided both cover and purpose for assets that had become liabilities. We know this story only because of dogged local journalism by reporters like Bob Fitrakis, who refused to let it disappear. And we still don't know the full picture. The investigations were stopped, the records remain scattered, and many of the key players have taken their secrets to the grave. What we do know is this: the line between covert operations and legitimate commerce is sometimes thinner than we'd like to believe, and Jeffrey Epstein understood that better than most.